this is Fred Scuttle, Head of Security for the Genesis Tour. On behalf of the management, and I'd love to be half of the management, may I ask you to take your seats because the show will start in a few minutes. I will just pop down to the dressing room now and see if the lads have sobered, see if the lads are ready.
Love an album that find there's at least one song on it that's not up to the standard of the rest. This podcast is for you. Welcome to Trimming the Musical Fat. I'm Paul Nicholson.
And I'm Stephen Nicholson.
And thank you for joining us for the latest Trimming the Classic episode. And the subject of today's episode is the most successful album by legendary English rock band Genesis and their album from 1986, Invisible Touch. Start with Stephen asking me 3 questions about the album.
So, hello everyone, and here's question 1. So, which track from Invisible Touch did the band not play live on the subsequent tour?
Brazilian?
It is not. I'll give you a second choice. Only 8 songs.
Anything She Does.
Anything She Does is correct. Yep, never played it on the tour. Which is the instrumental track on the Invisible Touch album?
Brazilian.
The Brazilian, the final track on it. And the third and final question, which Invisible Touch album song had featured puppets from the 1980s UK sketch show Spitting Image?
Land of Confusion.
Land of Confusion. Great video. Well done.
Invisible Touch is the 13th studio album by English rock band Genesis. Genesis are singer and drummer Phil Collins, keyboardist Tony Banks, and guitarist Mike Rutherford. The album was released in June 1986 and produced by Hugh Padgham. As with their previous album, it was written entirely through group improvisations and no material developed prior to recording was used. Invisible Touch would go on to be a worldwide success and reach number 1 on the UK album charts and number 3 on the US Billboard Hot 100. It remains the band's highest selling album after it was certified multi-platinum. Over 1.2 million copies in the UK alone and 6 million sold in the US. Genesis became the first band and foreign act to have 5 singles from one album reached the top 5 on the US Billboard Hot 100 singles chart, with Invisible Touch being the first and only song to reach number 1 on the charts there. The album received mixed reviews upon its release, and retrospectively, with its pop-oriented approach and perceived similarities to Collins' solo work, receiving both praise and criticism at the same time.
And who'll be waiting?
We've all been doing stuff on our own. I think everyone assumes that as soon as you start doing things on your own, that's the end of the band. And it's never been any doubt between the 3 of us that, we always get together every so often when all the time presents itself to do something. So I think it's just something to write about, basically, the people that say that we're splitting up or have split up.
Stephen, when did you first hear the Invisible Touch album?
Well, it's funny because this is the first album I ever bought with my own money. I think it must have been 1987. I still vividly remember going down to buy it. Because you've got to think back then, to actually buy an album was quite a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So you actually didn't buy all that many albums. You tended to go with 12 inches or 7-inch singles. So I remember buying it on cassette and 1987, and I actually knew most of the songs already because by the time I bought it, all 5 singles from it had been released. I think the latest, which had just come out, was Throwing It All Away. So, and there's only 8 tracks on the album, so already knew more than half of them. It was, I loved it then. I love it now. I don't think there's any fat in it. As I say, 8 tracks. All of them are really, really good. And it's just a great pop rock record. And yes, I can see why some people dismissed it, which tends to happen when people really love a band, then that band has an incredibly successful album, and
Like mainstream
and it
success.
makes them go mainstream, yeah, and everybody wants to go to their concerts, and everybody's buying the album, and fans tend to not choose not to like that album, and give you like Let's Dance, Bowie, Metallica's Black Album, and so on. It's just what happens. And I can see why people would be going, oh, it's maybe too close to Phil Collins's solo work, and yeah, it is very commercial, but that never bothered me at all. I still think it's a great record. What about you?
Yeah, I had at the same time as you when you got it. And it's funny because although the album came out in 86, I kind of see the album as 87 because by that point, all the singles had been released. And as you say, Throwing It All Away was just being released at the same time as we were hearing the album for the first time. So it's just a brilliant album. It's a classic album. And it defines that era as well, that mid-80s era. And you're talking about there's no fat in it. And of course, because of the next album, We Can't Dance, was 91, that was the time of the CD. And then obviously that was quite bloated, although there was some brilliant stuff on it. And that was an example of early 90s as well. And the problem with the longer time on CDs.
Yeah, I actually think that would be a really good album to revisit, because I wasn't overly enamored with We Can't Dance. I think the singles were really, really good, but I never really got into that album, and I've not listened to it in probably decades. And it was too long, but that would be a really good album to revisit.
It's a good album. It is a good album.
Yeah, because probably I like it a lot more now, probably. But yeah, we should do that sometime.
What was your favourite song on the album?
It's actually this was really tough. So I was re-listening to the album, which was great. And I was fortunate enough, I think it was maybe last year or the year before, maybe last year, the album got re-released. I think through HMV, maybe on coloured vinyl. And so yeah, I managed to get it, and it's obviously remastered. I think it's orange vinyl. I'm sure it's on. I should remember. I just had it on a few days ago. But yeah, it's great. So, but no, it's tough because there's only 8 songs. There's not a bad song on the album, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it came down to a fight between Tonight, 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 Land of Confusion, Domino, and Throwing It All Away.
Pretty much the whole album.
Pretty much the whole album, yeah. But if I had to pick one, and this was tough, I think it was a fight in the end between Land of Confusion and Domino. I'll go with Domino.
She's such a terrible thing, as you seen last night on the TV. Maybe if we're lucky, they will show it again. Such a terrible thing to see. Oh, but there's nothing I can do when you're next in line. But you gotta go down. Now I'm on with the
And I think because it is I think it's the longest song on the album. I think Tonight, Tonight, Tonight's just a little bit less than this. So yeah, it's maybe the most epic song on it. It's kind of obviously split into 2 parts. And yeah, it's just got an epic feel. And I think especially when it kind of moves into that second stage and it ramps up, it's like a film soundtrack type thing, or a film theme.
The liquid surrounds me. I fight to rise from this river of hell. I stare round about me, and children are swimming and playing with boats. Their features are changing, their bodies dissolve, and I am alone.
It's really good. You know, where the liquid surrounds me, that part.
Yeah.
That is great, and a nice lull in the middle of it before it ramps up. So yeah, I think I would go with that. And another thing as well, it wasn't a single, so maybe it doesn't have the over familiarity of perhaps some of the other songs as well. It is very much just known to those that have the album. So yeah, I think that's what I would go with. What would you say is your favorite?
It's really hard, like yourself. I really like But also at the same time, the Invisible Touch single itself, that's just
Yeah, it's
so
good.
catchy as well. It's like so commercial and
And now it seems I'm falling for her. She seems to have invisible touch. She reaches in and grabs right hold of your heart. She seems to have invisible touch. It takes control and slowly tears you apart.
Yes, number one.
I know. And then In Too Deep, that's an amazing song as well. It's really hard, but I might probably go for the same one actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, probably Domino. Just brilliant, as you say. It's like how it slows down and then it builds back up again.
Yep.
And it's almost like the prog rock of the 80s, almost, I suppose, from Genesis. It's the 70s, and now you've got them on keyboards, but it just works. It's really good.
It does.
It's not like it, because I think some of the stuff from the 70s, it was good, but it was like a bit overindulgent. Sometimes it was like too long, whereas this one just feels right. The timing's really doesn't really feel like it's long.
Yeah, it doesn't feel indulgent.
So I would say Domino as well. Yeah. And what would you say is your least favourite? But it's really hard, I suppose, considering we both really love the album. What if you had to take one song off the album? I've got a feeling it's the same one.
This probably wasn't too hard, actually, because I think there's one song, and it's not a bad song by any means whatsoever, but I don't think it's quite as strong as the other 7 songs, and it's Anything She Does.
That's what I was going to say. I thought
So the starter side too, and I actually always associate, when I think of the song, I just always associate it with the video, which had Benny Hill in it.
I won't ever know, I'll ever get to know her. I'll be the cause of anything she does. I won't ever know, I'll ever get to hold her. Or do you think this sinking could be love? You know, you're thinking in some fantasies you would not believe is what you had to do.
Remember, I think he was maybe backstage at one of their concerts and running around. So I always associate it with that. But it's a good song. It just so happens it's one I like least on the album. But yeah, what I do like about it is the bass notes that appear in the song after the horn stabs. You know, you get dum 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 dum. That's really good. And they appear just after each verse. So, but yeah, no, it's still a good song. Just happens to be the least favorite. What's your least favorite?
Part of me instinctively was going to go for Brazilian, but then I think
Oh, really?
I like the sound of that as well. It's really
I think
cool.
it's great. I think the
Sounds
Brazilian is
like
great.
Jan
Song.
Hammer, sort of something like that.
Yeah, could be, but Jan Hammer or James Bond type theme.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a great tune.
I'll go for Throwing It All Away,
Really?
which is a good song, but it's just if I had to take one off, yeah.
We cannot live together. We cannot live apart. And that's the situation. I've known it from the start. Every time that I look at you, well, I can see the future. 'Cause you know, babe, that I don't wanna go. Just throwing it all away. Throwing it all away. Is there nothing that I can say to make you change your mind?
Surprising choice, yeah. Didn't think you would go for that. I think that one for me is, I just, there's something about that song. I just really, really like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gotta Lose One. That's the one.
Yeah.
For you?
Mhm. So before we go, a reminder that there are over 80 other Trimming the Musical Fat pods that you can listen to, and a dozen movie-related shows on our other sister podcast, Trimming the Movie Fat. Like what you've heard and you want to show your appreciation? Why not buy Stephen and I a coffee via buymeacoffee.com. To conclude, thank you for listening. Until next time, keep trimming.
Trimming the Musical Fat podcast is a Stephen and Paul Nicholson production. Contact us via voicemail by going to anchor.fm/TTMF/message or tweet us at Musical Trimming or email us at trimmingthemusicfat@gmail.com. Keep up to date on the show by joining our Facebook group or visiting our website www.trimmingthemusicalfat.com.
I love it. I love it.